Alien Empress abandoned her dragon. Frozen for 2,000 years, reaches its dramatic peak when Branath, instead of using destructive fire as expected, lands atop the prison dome, broadcasting the prisoner's suffering galaxy-wide. This pivotal choice, to witness rather than destroy, transforms the dragon from weapon to liberator, sparking system-wide outrage that makes authorities hesitate while thousands escape to freedom. The ice of Rune 7 held secrets deeper than any drill bit could reach. Jace Morrow knew this, but it didn't stop him from trying. After all, that's what they paid him for, to find what was buried and bring it to the surface. Today, the geothermal tap was running 12 hours behind schedule, and corporate would have his head if they missed another deadline. "Thermal mapping complete," said the scanner, its mechanical voice echoing through the cavernous chamber of ice and ancient stone. "Anomaly detected." Jace frowned, wiping frost from his beard. This wasn't his first job on a frontier world, but Rune 7 had a way of getting under your skin. Literally, if you weren't careful, frostbite here could take a finger in minutes. "Define anomaly," he muttered, tapping commands into his wrist interface. "Organic signature, weak thermal radiation, faint electrical impulse consistent with cardiac rhythm." Jace scoffed. Nothing lived on Rune 7 except the team and the moss they'd seeded for oxygen production. The scanner was picking up interference from the geothermal vents. Nothing more. Still, he adjusted his headlamp and peered deeper into the chamber, where his team had broken through the outer wall of what appeared to be an ancient fortress. The colony records were spotty, like all frontier worlds. Rune 7 had been an outpost of the Galactic Empire before its collapse 2 millennia ago, then abandoned when the climate shifted and buried everything under kilometers of ice. Now, corporations were back, tapping the planet's molten core for energy, and Jace was just another cog in that machine, a skilled one, but replaceable. "Show me," he commanded, and the scanner projected a 3-dimensional map onto the nearest ice wall. Deep in the ruins, beyond several collapsed chambers, something was generating heat, something large, something alive. Curiosity got the better of Jace. Management would have him wait for the xenobiology team. But they were 3 days out, and he hadn't survived this long by waiting for permission. Besides, on the frontier, a foreman was a bit of everything: mechanic, medic, explorer. He packed his emergency kit and notified the surface team he was investigating a potential geothermal pocket, then descended into the darkness. The ancient corridors were remarkably preserved, though ice had reclaimed most surfaces. Remnants of technology peeked through in places: control panels, lighting fixtures, and occasionally symbols etched into metal plates that had survived the millennia. After navigating several tight passages and climbing down a partially collapsed stairwell, Jace reached a massive chamber, sealed behind doors of some unfamiliar alloy. The symbols here were clear and numerous, glowing faintly with residual power. Jace ran his scanner over the inscription. "Imperial Containment Protocol," it translated. "Subject Z09, Balnath, Apex Predator. Condemned 2,000 years ago by decree of Her Eternal Majesty, Empress Velikara. Warning: kill switch must be activated before thawing procedures." Jace felt a chill that had nothing to do with the sub-zero temperatures. He'd heard stories about the Empire's biological weapons program, how they'd enhanced and enslaved creatures from across the galaxy. But those were just stories, legends to frighten children, weren't they? The scanner beeped again, insistent. "Cardiac rhythm detected. Minimal life functions. Cryogenic suspension." Something was alive in there. Something that had been frozen for 2,000 years. Jace knew the protocol. Report it. Wait for corporate specialists. Let them decide what to do with whatever ancient weapon lay behind those doors. That's what a smart man would do. A man who wanted to keep his job, and possibly his life. But Jace had never been known for making the smart choice. He began deciphering the door controls, using the scanner to interpret the faded imperial sigils. After several false starts, the ancient system recognized his inputs. The doors groaned, hydraulics fighting against millennia of disuse. Ice cracked and shattered as the massive panels slowly separated. Frigid mist billowed out, and Jay stepped back, shielding his face. When the air cleared, he saw it. Encased in transparent material, neither glass nor plastic, but something more resilient, was an enormous creature. Its body was serpentine yet powerful, covered in scales that might once have shimmered with color, but now appeared dull and gray in cryostasis. 4 limbs ended in claws that could rend metal, and folded wings stretched from its back. Membrane-thin but reinforced with bony spines. The head was elongated, reptilian, with ridges and horns that formed a natural crown. A dragon. There was no other word for it, though Jace knew it must be some engineered biological construct, a weapon from an age when the Empire ruled through fear and overwhelming force. The creature's chest barely moved, rising and falling in rhythm with the scanner's beeping. Despite 2 millennia of imprisonment, it lived. Next to the cryogenic chamber was a control panel, its surface illuminated with more imperial sigils. Among them, a prominent red symbol pulsed slowly, the kill switch. One touch, and whatever life remained in that massive body would be extinguished forever. Corporate would want it alive. A bioweapon of this magnitude would be worth billions. The military would pay anything to control such a creature, but the Empire had locked it away for a reason. It was dangerous. It was condemned. Yet something in Jace rebelled at the thought of killing a helpless being, even one designed for destruction. He'd seen too many frontier worlds stripped of resources, too many indigenous species cataloged and then casually exterminated when they became inconvenient. He was tired of being the instrument of that casual cruelty. With a decisiveness that surprised even himself, Jace bypassed the kill switch and initiated the thawing sequence. Alarms immediately blared through the chamber. Warning, protocol violation, kill switch override, initiating containment countermeasures. Jace cursed and scrambled to disable the security systems. Whatever automated defenses the Empire had left were surely degraded after 2,000 years. But he wasn't taking chances. He rerouted power, severed connections, and eventually silenced the alarms. Then he waited, torch in hand, as the cryogenic chamber hummed to life. The transparent material began to glow, heat emanating from embedded elements. Ice melted, running in rivulets across the ancient floor. The chamber filled with steam and the sharp smell of chemicals breaking down. And the dragon moved. First, a twitch of talons, then a shudder that ran the length of its massive body. Its wings flexed against the confines of the chamber, and Jace heard the first sound it had made in 2 millennia. A low, rumbling groan that seemed to vibrate through the very stone beneath his feet. The transparent casing split along pre-designed seams, retracting into the floor and ceiling. The dragon's body slumped forward, muscles atrophied from millennia of disuse. Its eyes remained closed, but its breathing deepened. Jace stood his ground, though every instinct screamed at him to run. He was a welder, a foreman, not a xenobiologist, not a soldier. He had no business awakening ancient weapons. Yet here he was, torch raised, as if it would do anything against a creature of this size. Steam continued to rise from the dragon's body as its temperature slowly increased. Its scales began to show color, deep blues and greens with hints of bronze along the ridges of its spine and wings. Then, with a suddenness that made Jace step back, its eyes snapped open. They were golden, with vertical pupils that contracted sharply in the light of Jace's torch. The dragon's head lifted, nostrils flaring as it took in the scents of the chamber. Then, its gaze fixed on Jace. For a long moment, neither moved. Jace's heart hammered in his chest, but he forced himself to remain still. Running would only trigger a predator's instinct to chase. The dragon's jaws parted, revealing rows of teeth like polished knives. But instead of attacking, it made a sound, a series of clicks and rumbles deep in its throat. It was trying to speak. Jace's scanner lit up, attempting to translate, but the language was unknown, perhaps a specialized communication protocol developed for the Empire's biological weapons. The dragon tried to stand, but its limbs trembled and gave way. It collapsed with a crash that shook the chamber, dislodging ice from the ceiling. Despite its fearsome appearance, it was weak, vulnerable. Jace made a decision that would change everything. He lowered his torch and approached slowly, hands visible. "Easy," he said, knowing the word meant nothing to the creature, but hoping his tone would convey his intent. "You've been asleep a long time. You need to take it slow." The dragon's eyes tracked his movement, but it made no aggressive motion. It tried again to rise, muscles straining visibly beneath its scales. Jace's engineer's mind kicked in. The creature needed support, heat, and time to recover. He could provide that. "I'm going to help you," he said, more to steady his own nerves than to communicate with the dragon. "Just don't eat me, okay?" Working quickly, but cautiously, always keeping the dragon in sight. Jace began rerouting heating elements from the cryogenic chamber, creating a warm zone around the creature. He improvised structural supports from debris and equipment, positioning them where the dragon could use them to brace itself as it regained strength. As he worked, he discovered a data cache near the control panel, records regarding the dragon's imprisonment. His scanner struggled with the ancient encryption, but fragments came through. No. Subject Balnath, designation Z09, sentenced to indefinite cryogenic containment for violation of Imperial Directive 13. Refused termination order during pacification of Sector KL7. The disobeyed direct command from Her Eternal Majesty. Jace pieced together the story. This creature, Balnath, had been an Imperial weapon, but it had defied the Empress. It had refused to kill, for showing mercy. It had been condemned to this frozen tomb. When Jace looked up from the records, he found the dragon watching him intently. There was intelligence in those golden eyes, not just the cunning of a predator, but something deeper, something conscious. "You didn't follow orders," Jace said, gesturing to the data cache. "You spared someone you were supposed to kill." The dragon's eyes narrowed, and it made another series of sounds. This time, Jace felt something strange, a pressure in his mind, like someone pushing against a door. "Not her," came a voice that wasn't a voice. The words formed in Jace's mind, accompanied by a sensation of heat and confusion. Jace staggered back. "You can speak. In my head." The dragon's head tilted. "Not her." The mental voice was stronger now, though still disjointed. "You are not her." "The Empress?" Jace guessed. "No, I'm not. The Empire fell a long time ago. You've been frozen for 2,000 years. The dragon struggled again to rise, and this time, using one of Jace's improvised supports, it managed to get its forelegs beneath it, its wings unfurled partially, scraping against the chamber walls. "Name," the dragon's mental voice demanded. "I'm Jace Morrow. I'm a foreman with Frontier Resources." "No." The dragon's frustration flowed through the mental connection. "Your name, not title." "Jace," he repeated. "My name is Jace." The dragon seemed to process this. "Jace," it repeated, the mental voice becoming clearer. "I am Branath." "Branath," Jace echoed, "not Balnath." The dragon's mind voice carried a note of disdain. "Imperial designation, not name." Jace nodded slowly. "Okay, Branath. I'm going to help you get out of here." Before the dragon could respond, a new sound filled the chamber, a high-pitched whine that made Jace cover his ears. The air in the center of the room shimmered, and a figure materialized, a holographic projection of a woman in elaborate robes, her features sharp and her eyes cold. "Bronth," the hologram spoke, its voice carrying the distortion of ancient technology. "You have awakened prematurely. Return to hibernation immediately." Bronth's reaction was immediate and violent. A roar shook the chamber, and fire erupted from the dragon's jaws, engulfing the hologram. The projection flickered, but remained, its program continuing regardless of the dragon's response. "Imperial Override Zeta 93, the hologram continued. "You will comply or face termination." Jace realized what was happening. The thawing sequence had triggered some automated system, a failsafe. The hologram wasn't interactive. It was a recording, an echo of the Empire's final command to its disobedient weapon. But something else was happening too. The hologram was being broadcast from somewhere, which meant something out there was still functional, still monitoring this prison. "Bronath," Jace called urgently. "It's not real. It's just a recording." The dragon's eyes narrowed, and Jace felt suspicion through their mental connection. "Empire still exists?" "No, but something's broadcasting this message. Something that might bring real trouble." The hologram continued its demands, cycling through commands and override codes. Jace traced the signal to a receiver in the ceiling, part of an ancient communications array. "We need to destroy that," Jace said, pointing. "And then we need to move. Whoever's monitoring this place knows you're awake now." Bronth seemed to understand. With effort, the dragon rose fully to its feet, wings extending as far as the chamber allowed. It drew a deep breath, and Jace ducked behind a pillar, just as fire erupted again. Not the unfocused burst of before, but a precise stream that melted the communications array into slag. The hologram vanished mid-sentence. Bronth turned to Jace, and he felt approval through their connection. "You freed me. Why?" Jace didn't have a good answer. "Because it seemed wrong to kill you. Because you were condemned for showing mercy." The dragon's mental voice grew stronger. "The Empire punishes mercy. Always has." "The Empire is gone," Jace reminded him. "But its ghosts are still dangerous. Can you walk? We need to get out of here." Bronth took an unsteady step, then another. Movement was clearly painful after so long immobile, but determination radiated through their mental link. "Lead. I will follow." Jace guided the dragon through the ruins, choosing the widest passages and helping clear debris where necessary. Bronth's strength returned gradually, though the creature was clearly nowhere near its full power. They had nearly reached the surface when Jace's scanner flashed a warning. "Multiple atmospheric entries detected. Imperial signatures." Jace's blood ran cold. "That's impossible. The Empire fell 2,000 years ago." Bronth's mental voice was grim. "Not Empire, collectors." "Collectors? Those who gather Empire's weapons, scavengers of power." Through their strengthening mental link, Jace saw fragments of memory, ships bearing Imperial insignia, modified with newer technology, hunters who tracked down and reclaimed the Empire's lost assets, selling them to the highest bidder, or using them for their own purposes. "They detected the revival sequence," Bronth continued. "They come for me, to use or destroy." Jace checked his scanner again. 3 ships, descending rapidly toward their location. They had minutes at most. "Can you fly?" he asked Bronth. The dragon stretched its wings experimentally. "Not yet. Too weak." Jace's mind raced. They couldn't outrun the ships, and they couldn't hide, not with the thermal signature Bronth was giving off. They would have to fight. "I need to get to the surface camp," Jace decided. "There's equipment there we can use." They emerged from the ruins into the biting cold of Rune 7's perpetual winter. The sky was dark with gathering storm clouds, but Jace could make out the descending lights of the collector ships, sleek, predatory craft designed for pursuit and capture. The surface camp was a collection of prefabricated structures clustered around the drilling equipment. The rest of Jace's team had evacuated when the scanner detected the incoming ships, following emergency protocols. That was good. Fewer people in danger, and no witnesses to question Jace's actions. "They will have binders," Bronath warned, the mental voice clearer now that they were linked. "Neural cage rigs, designed for creatures like me." "Then we'll have to improvise," Jace replied, leading the way to the equipment shed. Inside, Jace worked frantically, repurposing drilling equipment and welding together makeshift weapons. He converted a geological scanner into a disruption field generator that might interfere with the collector's targeting systems. He rigged the drill's hydraulic arms into defensive barricades that could be remotely controlled. Most impressively, he modified the main geothermal tap into a weapon. Under normal circumstances, it channeled the planet's heat in a controlled manner. With Jace's modifications, it could release that energy in a concentrated burst. Not quite a weapon of mass destruction, but enough to give the collectors pause. Through it all, Bronath watched with growing respect, occasionally offering suggestions through their mental link. The dragon's knowledge of Imperial technology proved invaluable, guiding Jace's adaptations. "They come," Bronath warned as the first ship broke through the cloud cover. It was sleek and black, shaped like a predatory bird, with weapon emplacements clearly visible along its hull. It hovered above the camp, scanners sweeping the area. A voice boomed from external speakers. "Attention unauthorized personnel. You have accessed restricted Imperial property. Surrender the asset designated Z09 immediately, or face summary execution." Jace activated the disruption field. The ship's scanners flickered, and it drifted slightly, its systems momentarily confused. "They cannot see clearly," Bronath confirmed, "but they know we are here." The ship landed at the perimeter of the camp, and armored figures emerged, 6 of them, carrying equipment that Jace didn't recognize, but Bronath identified through their link: neural suppressors, binding mechanisms, transport containers. "Stay behind the barricades," Jace told Bronath. "Let them come to us." The collectors advanced cautiously, their armor reminiscent of Imperial design, but updated with newer technology. They spread out, clearly intending to surround the equipment shed. Jace waited until they were in position, then activated the first of his improvisations. The drill's hydraulic arms swung into action, smashing into the snow around the collectors. They weren't aimed to hit, just to create confusion and cover. Snow and ice erupted around the armored figures. 2 were knocked off their feet by the force of the impact. The others raised weapons, energy projectors that hummed with power. Before they could fire, Jace triggered the geothermal vent. Superheated steam burst from the ground in a controlled pattern, creating a blinding, scalding barrier between them and the collectors. Through the chaos, Jace glimpsed a second ship descending. Time was running out. "Bronath," he called through their link, "can you create fire? Not to kill, just to disable." The dragon's mental voice was stronger now, invigorated by the confrontation. "Yes, stand back." Bronath moved forward, muscles rippling beneath scales that had regained much of their color, deep blue-green with bronze highlights that caught the light. The dragon inhaled deeply, chest expanding, and then exhaled. What emerged wasn't the raw flame that had destroyed the hologram projector. This was something more controlled, a wave of heat that washed over the area where the collectors stood. Their armor systems sparked and failed. Weapons dropped from suddenly nerveless fingers. But none were burned, none killed. Through their link, Jace felt Bronath's satisfaction, and something else: pride. The dragon had refined its power, using it with precision rather than destruction. The second ship had landed, and more collectors were emerging. Jace activated the makeshift turret he'd assembled from drilling components. Not a lethal weapon, but capable of firing superheated steam with enough force to knock an armored figure off their feet. Between Jace's improvised defenses and Broneth's controlled bursts of heat, they managed to disable the second group of collectors. But the third ship was descending, and Jace's scanner showed more vessels approaching from orbit. "We can't keep this up," Jace said grimly. Broneth's mental voice was calm. "No need. Watch." The dragon stretched to its full height, wings extending. Though still not fully recovered, Broneth cut an imposing figure against the snowy backdrop. The dragon's chest expanded again, but instead of breathing fire, Broneth roared. The sound was unlike anything Jace had ever heard, not just loud, but complex, layered with subsonic frequencies that made his bones vibrate and his teeth ache. The snow around them rippled from the force of it. The third ship halted its descent abruptly, hovering uncertainly. "What did you do?" Jace asked through their link. "Spoke truth," Broneth replied. "In old tongue. Told them what became of those who caged me before." The ship remained stationary for several long moments. Then, to Jace's amazement, it began to ascend. The scanner showed the other approaching vessels changing course as well, pulling back to a higher orbit. "They're retreating?" Jace couldn't believe it. "For now," Broneth cautioned. "They will return with greater numbers, greater weapons." Jace nodded grimly. "Then we need to be gone before they do." He gathered essential supplies while Broneth tested its wings, stretching the membranes and working the atrophied muscles. The dragon wasn't yet strong enough for sustained flight, but it could glide for short distances, using the fierce winds of Rune 7 to its advantage. They set out across the frozen wasteland, away from the camp and the ancient ruins. Jace had studied the planetary surveys extensively before the mission. He knew of a network of ice caves several kilometers to the east that might provide shelter and concealment from orbital scans. As they traveled, their mental link strengthened. Jace learned more about Broneth, not just what the Empire had made the dragon to be, but who Broneth was. The dragon came from a species that had possessed natural telepathic abilities, which the Empire had enhanced and weaponized. Broneth had been a weapon, yes, but always something more, something the Empire had failed to fully control. "Why did you disobey?" Jace asked, as they sheltered in a crevasse during a particularly violent snowstorm. "The record said you refused to kill during a pacification operation." Broneth was silent for a long moment, mental presence withdrawing slightly. Then, instead of words, the dragon shared a memory. Jace saw through Broneth's eyes. A settlement on a verdant world. Simple dwellings surrounded by fields of crops. He felt the heat of fire in Broneth's throat, the command echoing through a neural link similar to what they now shared. Burn them all. Leave no survivors. He felt Broneth's wings fold as the dragon descended toward the settlement. Felt the eyes of the inhabitants, not human, but humanoid, with luminous skin and three-fingered hands, as they looked up in terror. And then, unexpectedly, he felt something else through Broneth's memory, a mental touch, fragile but determined. One of the settlers, a child, reaching out instinctively with a nascent telepathic ability. Not with words, but with pure emotion, fear, yes, but also wonder at the sight of the dragon, innocence, curiosity. In that moment, Broneth had made a choice. The dragon had closed its jaws, extinguishing the flame, and landed, not with destructive force, but with deliberate gentleness. The Imperial commander had raged through the neural link, but Broneth had severed the connection, shielding the settlement with its own body when the orbital bombardment began. The dragon had saved 37 lives that day, and for that mercy, Empress Velikara had sentenced Broneth to eternal imprisonment. The memory faded, leaving Jace shaken. "You did the right thing," he said finally. "Right," Broneth echoed, the mental voice pensive. "A human concept, complicated." "Not really," Jace argued. "You chose not to murder innocent people. That's pretty straightforward. The Empire does not recognize innocence, only obedience or defiance." The Empire is gone, Jace reminded the dragon again.
Its shadow remains. The collectors. Others who would use old weapons for new wars.
They fell silent, listening to the howl of the wind outside their shelter. Jace checked his scanner periodically, alert for signs of pursuit, but the storm seemed to have grounded even the collectors for now. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the landscape transformed under fresh snow. Jace and Broneth continued their journey toward the ice caves, making better time now that the dragon's strength was returning. Broneth could sustain short flights, which helped them navigate difficult terrain. They were halfway to their destination when the scanner alerted Jace to an incoming transmission. He almost ignored it, assuming it was the collectors trying to track them. But the frequency was different. Civilian, not military. Cautiously, he accepted the transmission.
Foreman Morrow?
The voice was female, tense but controlled. This is Commander Vela of the Free Worlds Coalition. We've detected unusual activity on Rune 7. Our intelligence suggests you've made contact with an Imperial biological asset. Jace exchanged a look with Broneth. The Free Worlds Coalition was a loose alliance of planets that had broken away from the corporate hegemony that followed the Empire's collapse. They weren't officially recognized by the Galactic Authority, but they weren't terrorists either. More like stubborn independence movements that had actually succeeded.
Who wants to know?
Jace replied cautiously.
Someone who doesn't want to see an Imperial weapon fall into corporate hands,
Vela answered. Or back into Imperial remnant control. The Empire fell 2,000 years ago, Jace pointed out. Tell that to the collectors, Vela replied dryly. And to the billions living under protectorate status, on worlds still governed by Imperial precedent law. That gave Jace pause. He knew the frontier was lawless, but the core worlds were supposed to be democratic now, governed by the Galactic Authority. What do you want, Commander? To meet. We have a ship nearby that can extract you and the asset before the collectors return in force. We're transmitting coordinates now. The scanner displayed a location, a narrow valley about 10 kilometers from their current position. Why should I trust you? Jace asked. Because we're not trying to put a neural cage on a sentient being, Vela replied. And because the collectors have called in reinforcements. You have approximately 12 hours before they blanket that planet with enough firepower to melt the ice caps. Vela out. The transmission ended, leaving Jace and Broneth in silence. Could be a trap, Jace said finally. Yes, Broneth agreed. But the warning about reinforcements rings true. I feel them approaching. Jace frowned. You can sense them from orbit? Not precisely, but the Empire built me to detect threats. My senses extend beyond the physical. Jace considered their options. The ice caves might hide them temporarily, but not from a full-scale sweep. And he had no illusions about his improvised defenses holding against a determined assault. What do you think? He asked Broneth. These Free Worlds people, are they any better than the collectors? The dragon's mental voice was thoughtful. Unknown, but they acknowledge my sentience. That is unusual. Jace nodded. Then, I guess we're heading to those coordinates. But we stay alert. First sign of trouble. We're out of there. They altered course. Broneth, now flying more regularly, gaining confidence and strength with each passage through the air. The dragon's scales had fully regained their color, a deep, iridescent blue-green that shimmered in the pale sunlight, with bronze ridges that gleamed like polished metal. As they approached the coordinates, Jace's scanner detected a ship, small, fast, with minimal weapons. It had landed in the valley, partially concealed by overhanging ice formations. A single figure waited beside it, unarmored, but wearing the practical cold weather gear of someone accustomed to frontier worlds. As they drew closer, Jace could make out more details. A woman, tall and lean, with close cropped hair and the watchful posture of a veteran. Commander Vela, I presume, Jace called as they came within speaking distance. The woman nodded, her gaze fixed on Broneth. There was awe in her expression, but also calculation. Foreman Morrow. And this must be the asset. Designation Z09, if our intelligence is correct. His name is Bronath, Jace corrected her. And he's not an asset. He's a person. Vela's eyebrows rose. A person? Interesting. She addressed the dragon directly. Is that how you see yourself, Bronath? The dragon regarded her silently for a moment, then responded through their shared mental link, though Jace could tell the communication was directed at Vela as well. I am Bronath. I choose my own purpose now. Vela flinched slightly at the mental contact, but recovered quickly. Telepathic. The reports mentioned that capability, but experiencing it is different. She straightened. We should go. The collectors will have reinforcements in orbit soon. Where exactly are we going? Jace asked. Sanctuary Station. For now. It's a hidden outpost where we can keep you both safe while we figure out next steps. Vela gestured to her ship. It's not luxurious, but it's fast and has a cargo hold large enough for your friend. Bronath's mental voice was wary. Another cage? No cages, Vela promised. You'll be free to leave whenever you wish. But I hope you'll hear us out first. They boarded the ship, which was indeed cramped but serviceable. The cargo hold had been hastily adapted to accommodate Bronath's size, with restraints for safety during flight, but nothing that could be considered a cage. As they broke atmosphere, Jace saw the collector ships in orbit, more than before, with larger vessels among them. They didn't pursue, either not detecting the small ship or choosing to focus on the planet's surface. They're still looking for you down there, Vela explained. Our departure was timed between their sensor sweeps. By the time they realize you're gone, we'll be long away. The journey to Sanctuary Station took 3 days through hyperspace. During that time, Vela kept mostly to the cockpit, leaving Jace and Bronath to their own devices. The dragon used the time to continue recovering, exercising in the limited space of the cargo hold, and experimenting with its restored powers. Jace learned more about the Free Worlds Coalition from the ship's databanks. They were indeed independence movements that had succeeded in breaking away from corporate control, but their freedom was precarious. Several coalition worlds had been reintegrated through economic pressure or outright military action by corporations working with the tacit approval of the Galactic Authority. Sanctuary Station itself was hidden in an asteroid field at the edge of known space, shielded from sensors and accessible only with precise navigation codes. As they approached, Jace saw that it was not the military installation he had expected, but something more akin to a refugee camp, a collection of habitats and repurposed ships joined together in a makeshift community. Not what you expected, Vela asked, noticing his expression as they docked. I thought the coalition would be more militarized, she smiled thinly. We fight when we must, but we're not conquerors. Most of our people just want to live free from corporate exploitation or imperial remnant control. They disembarked into a docking bay crowded with people, humans and non-humans alike, going about their business. All activity ceased when Bronath emerged from the cargo hold. Silence fell, followed by murmurs of awe and fear. It's all right, Vela announced to the gathered crowd. This is Bronath, a guest of the coalition. He is to be treated with respect. The crowd dispersed slowly, though many continued to cast glances at the dragon. Bronath bore the attention with dignity, though Jace could feel the dragon's discomfort through their link. Too many minds, Bronath explained privately. Loud, chaotic. We'll find you a quieter space, Jace promised. Vela led them through the station to a large chamber that had once been a ship's cargo hold, but had been converted into a meeting room. A dozen people waited inside. Coalition leadership, Jace presumed. The meeting that followed was tense. The coalition leaders were clearly divided on Bronath's presence. Some saw the dragon as a potential ally. Others as a dangerous weapon that should have remained locked away. All were interested in what Bronath knew about Imperial technology and defenses, particularly those that might still be operational on worlds under remnant control. Through it all, Bronath remained largely silent, communicating primarily with Jace through their link. The dragon observed, evaluated, but revealed little. Finally, as the discussion circled back to the same points for the third time, Vela cut through the debate.
Enough speculation, Bronath. We brought you here because we need your help. Specifically, your fire.
The dragon's eyes narrowed. To burn your enemies. To free our people, Vela corrected. There's a prison on Cauldrus 3, a corporate authority rehabilitation center, where political prisoners are held. Over 100,000 dissidents, protesters, and independence advocates. She activated a holographic display showing a massive dome structure surrounded by defense systems. The prison is designed to withstand conventional attacks. But your fire, a concentrated blast at these structural weak points, could breach the dome without harming the prisoners inside. Once the dome is compromised, the automated systems will trigger an evacuation. Our people on the inside will guide the prisoners to waiting ships. Jace studied the schematic. You want to use him as a weapon?
As a liberator, Vela insisted. One strategic strike to free 100,000 people. No one else has to die.
Bronath's mental voice was troubled. And if I refuse? Then, those people remain imprisoned. Some will die there, others will be rehabilitated. Their minds altered to make them compliant workers for the corporations that claim to own them.
The dragon was silent, but Jace could feel the conflict through their link. Memories of being used as a weapon before, of refusing to burn innocents, and being punished for that mercy.
We need time to consider this, Jace said finally.
Vela nodded reluctantly. Of course. But please understand, the window for this operation is closing. In 3 days, the prisoners will be transferred to separate facilities. We may never have another chance to free them all at once.
She led them to private quarters, a converted storage area large enough for Bronath to move comfortably. Once alone, Jace and the dragon spoke freely through their mental link. They would make me a weapon again, Bronath said, mental voice heavy with memory. To free prisoners, Jace pointed out, it's not the same as what the Empire demanded.
Is it not? Destruction in service of someone else's cause? The beginning of a path that leads back to chains?
Jace couldn't argue with that. What do you want, Bronath? Not what the Coalition wants. Not what I want. What do you want?
The dragon was silent for a long time, mental presence withdrawn in contemplation. Finally,
Bronath responded. I want to choose, to act according to my own judgment, not another's command. I want to use my power to protect, not destroy. Then, we tell them no, Jace said simply. We find another way out of here if we have to.
Bronath's mental voice softened. You would defy them for my choice?
Of course, that's what freedom means. The dragon seemed moved by this. In 2,000 years, you are the first to ask what I want, not what I can do for you, but what I desire for myself. Their conversation was interrupted by a chime at the door. Vela entered, her expression grave. We've received new intelligence, she said without preamble. The transfer of prisoners has been moved up. It begins tomorrow. Jace felt Bronath's alarm through their link. That doesn't change our decision, he began, but the dragon interrupted. Show me, Bronath demanded, mental voice extending to include Vela. Show me these prisoners, not schematics, people. Vela hesitated, then nodded. She produced a small projector and activated it. The image that appeared showed crowded cells, people of various species packed together in conditions that made Jace wince. Many bore signs of mistreatment, untreated injuries, malnutrition, the vacant stare of those denied sleep. These were taken by an infiltration team last month, Vela explained. Conditions have worsened since then. The corporations are making examples of these prisoners to discourage further resistance. Bronath's mental voice was quiet, but intense. They suffer because they sought freedom, as I did. Yes, Vela confirmed. Many defied direct orders, refused to participate in exploitation of their own worlds. Like you, they chose mercy over obedience. The dragon's gaze shifted to Jace. I must help them. Jace nodded slowly. I understand, but we do it our way, not just following the Coalition's plan. What do you suggest? Vela asked, a hint of impatience in her voice. Jace looked at Bronath, an idea forming. You said your defiance of the Empire was choosing not to burn. What if, instead of using fire to destroy the prison, we use Bronath's other abilities? Other abilities? Vela frowned. The Empire made him more than a weapon, Jace explained. They enhanced his natural telepathic abilities, made him a communicator as well as a destroyer. Understanding dawned in Vela's eyes. You're suggesting we won't burn them, Jace said, the plan crystallizing as he spoke. We'll witness them. The operation was planned in a frenzy of activity. Vela was skeptical at first, but as Jace and Bronath elaborated on their alternative approach, she began to see its potential. It was riskier than a direct assault, but offered something the Coalition hadn't considered. A victory, not just for the prisoners on Cauldrus 3, but for their cause throughout the galaxy. They departed Sanctuary Station 12 hours later, aboard a Coalition stealth ship. With them went a small team of specialists, communications experts, former prisoners who knew the facility, and a handful of fighters for protection. The journey to Cauldrus 3 was tense. The planet was deep in corporate authority space, heavily patrolled and bristling with automated defense systems. They approached under cover of a meteor shower, using the natural phenomenon to mask their heat signature. As they entered orbit, Jace studied the prison dome through the ship's sensors. It was even more imposing than the holograms had suggested, a massive structure of reinforced plasteel and energy shields, surrounded by weapon emplacements and patrol ships. Are you sure about this? He asked Bronath through their link. The dragon's mental voice was resolute. Yes, it is time to use my power for my own purpose, not another's. They landed several kilometers from the prison, in a ravine deep enough to shield the ship from orbital scans. From there, Bronath would fly to the prison dome, a journey of minutes for the now recovered dragon. Before departing, the Coalition team equipped Bronath with specialized gear, a harness containing communications equipment and small cameras that would broadcast what the dragon witnessed. Remember, Jace said as he helped secure the harness, the goal isn't destruction, it's exposure. Make them see what they've been hiding. Bronath's golden eyes met his. I remember, witness, not weapon. With a powerful downstroke of wings, the dragon launched into the sky, quickly becoming a distant silhouette against the clouded atmosphere of Cauldrus 3. Jace and the Coalition team monitored Bronath's progress from the ship. Through their mental link, Jace could feel the dragon's exhilaration at flying freely after 2 millennia of imprisonment, tempered by focus on the mission ahead. Alarms began to sound as Bronath approached the prison dome. Defense systems activated, tracking the dragon's approach. Energy weapons fired. But Bronath was too fast, too agile, dodging and weaving through the barrage with a grace that belied the dragon's size. They've spotted him, one of the Coalition operators reported unnecessarily. Defense grid is fully active. Patrol ships launching, another added. 5 vessels. Jace watched tensely as Bronath continued toward the dome, now pursued by sleek security craft, firing continuous bursts of energy weapons. None connected, whether due to the dragon's speed or deliberate missing by pilots unwilling to destroy such a unique target. Jace couldn't tell. Through their link, he felt Bronath's determination. The dragon wasn't afraid, wasn't angry, just focused on the task at hand. With a final burst of speed, Bronath reached the dome, landing with precision on its curved surface. Claws designed to tear through battle armor easily found purchase in the plasteel. The pursuing ships circled warily, weapons trained on the dragon but not firing, likely awaiting orders from superiors unwilling to risk damaging the prison structure. Broadcasting now, the communications specialist announced. Signal is going out system-wide. Bronath activated the cameras, and the feed appeared on screens throughout the ship. The dragon's perspective showed the massive dome stretching in all directions, and through gaps in its structure, the prison complex within, cell blocks, guard stations, processing centers. But more importantly, the feed showed the prisoners. Thousands of faces turned upward, watching in wonder and confusion as the dragon perched atop their prison. Many had never seen the sky before, having been born in captivity or imprisoned so long that the outside world was a distant memory. Through the specialized communications equipment, Bronath projected not just images, but emotions, letting the galaxy feel what the prisoners felt: fear, hope, defiance, suffering. The mental broadcast was powerful, reaching beyond Cauldrus 3 to nearby systems, carried by emergency channels that couldn't be easily blocked. "It's working," Vela breathed, watching as reports began coming in from across the sector. "People are seeing. Corporate media is trying to block the transmission, but they can't keep up." Jace felt a surge of pride through his link with Bronath. The dragon was doing exactly what it had chosen to do, not destroying, but revealing, not burning, but illuminating. On the dome, prison authorities had recovered from their initial shock. Guards in heavy armor approached Bronath cautiously, weapons ready, but not yet firing. Through the cameras, Jace could see the fear in their movements, the uncertainty in the face of a creature from legend. Bronath ignored them, focusing instead on projecting the truth of what was happening inside the prison. The dragon's telepathic abilities, enhanced by the Coalition's technology, penetrated the walls of the facility, drawing forth the experiences of those within: the beatings, the forced labor, the psychological torture disguised as rehabilitation. It was working better than they had dared hope. Reports continued to flood in, public outrage spreading across systems, demands for accountability, calls for inspection teams to be sent to Cauldrus 3 immediately. Then, a new alarm sounded on the Coalition ship. "Corporate Authority battlecruiser entering the system," the sensor operator reported, voice tight with tension. "Weapons hot. They're preparing to fire on the prison dome." Jace felt cold dread. "They'd kill their own people." "They'd rather have dead martyrs than living witnesses," Vela said grimly. "We need to extract Bronath now." But through their link, Jace felt the dragon's refusal. "Not yet. Almost done." On the screens, they could see what Bronath was doing. The dragon had begun systematically disabling the prison's internal security systems, not with fire, but with precise applications of heat that melted control panels and severed power conduits. Doors that had been locked for decades slid open. Barriers between cell blocks dissolved. The prisoners were moving now, following the path that Bronath was creating for them, not in a chaotic riot, but in an organized evacuation, guided by the Coalition infiltrators, who had been posing as guards and maintenance workers. "Battlecruiser in firing position," the sensor operator warned. "Energy weapons charging." Through their link, Jace sent desperate urgency. "Bronath, you need to leave, now." The dragon's response was calm. "Almost done. The last sector remains locked." On the screen, they could see Bronath moving to a heavily reinforced section of the dome, isolation cells where the most dangerous prisoners were kept. With careful application of heat, the dragon melted through the final barriers. As the last prisoners joined the evacuation, Bronath finally launched back into the sky, just as the battlecruiser fired. Energy beams lanced toward the dome, but the dragon was no longer there. The beams struck empty space, their operators apparently unwilling to risk hitting the prison now that images of the prisoners were being broadcast across the sector. Bronath soared away from the prison, cameras still transmitting. Below, thousands of former prisoners streamed out of the compromised facility, moving toward pre-designated extraction points where coalition ships waited. The corporate authority forces were in disarray. The battlecruiser couldn't fire on the escaping prisoners without confirming to the watching galaxy that they were willing to massacre their own citizens. The patrol ships were outnumbered by the incoming coalition vessels responding to the prearranged signal. Bronath returned to the ravine where Jace and the team waited, landing with a grace that belied the dragon's size. As the cameras were disconnected, Jace approached, feeling the dragon's exhaustion but also satisfaction through their link. "You did it," he said simply. "We did," Bronath corrected. "Your plan, my ability, their courage." The dragon nodded toward Vela and her team, who were coordinating the extraction of prisoners to coalition ships. Reports continued to come in as they prepared to depart. The prison break had been almost completely successful. Of the 100,000 prisoners, more than 95,000 had escaped. The rest had chosen to remain behind to help others or had been too ill to travel. But even they would benefit. Inspection teams from neutral systems were already en route to Cauldrus 3, responding to the public outcry generated by Bronath's broadcast. More importantly, the nature of the victory had changed something. The corporate authority couldn't dismiss this as a terrorist attack or an isolated incident. The entire sector had witnessed the conditions in the prison, had felt the prisoners' experiences through Bronath's telepathic broadcast. Public opinion had shifted dramatically, with protests erupting on dozens of worlds, demanding accountability and reform. As their ship broke atmosphere, joining a convoy of vessels carrying former prisoners to Sanctuary, Jace stood with Bronath in the observation bay, watching Cauldrus 3 recede. "What now?" Jace asked. "The Coalition will want your help with other operations. You've proven how effective you can be." The dragon was silent for a moment, golden eyes contemplative. "I will help when I choose to help, not as a weapon, but as a witness. There are many truths still buried, many injustices hidden from sight. And the collectors, they'll still be hunting you." Bronath's mental voice carried a note of grim amusement. "Let them try. I am no longer frozen, no longer weak, and I am not alone." The dragon's gaze turned to Jace. "Unless you wish to return to your former life." Jace laughed. "After this? I don't think Frontier Resources would welcome me back with open arms. Besides, someone needs to keep modifying those communications rigs you're carrying. Might as well be me." Through their link, he felt Bronath's pleasure at his response, a warmth that had nothing to do with the dragon's fire. As the convoy entered hyperspace, leaving Cauldrus 3 and its failed prison behind, Jace thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a frozen tomb on a forgotten world to the center of a galactic uprising. All because he had chosen mercy over protocol. The Empire had fallen 2,000 years ago, but its shadows remained, in the collectors, in the corporate authority, in all who used power to dominate rather than protect. Those shadows would not be dispelled easily or quickly, but they had made a start. Bronath had been condemned for showing mercy. Now, that same mercy had become a force more powerful than the dragon's fire, a flame of truth that could not be extinguished. As if sensing his thoughts, Bronath's mental voice touched his mind, warm with friendship and shared purpose. The Empire feared mercy because it could not control it. They thought it weakness, but it is strength. "The greatest strength," Jace agreed. Ahead of them, stars streaked past in the blue-white tunnel of hyperspace, carrying them toward an uncertain future. But whatever came next, they would face it together, not as weapon and wielder, but as allies who had chosen their own path. As witnesses to both the darkness of oppression and the light of liberation. And in the void between stars, that was enough.